Mark Shepard. I'm a longtime friend of Darnell, almost 50 years, and I was very active in the struggle to keep him out of jail in 1982 and 1984. And I just want to say a couple of things real quick. First of all, it's been 52 years that this case has been hanging over Darnell Summers' head. This is outrageous. This has to be dropped, and the charges have to be dropped with prejudice, meaning they can never be reinstated again. They failed twice, 1968, 1960, and 1984, and it's been proven that there is no legal, ethical, or practical grounds for proceeding with this case, and that's a quote from Wayne County Prosecutor John O'Hare in 1984. Secondly, we're not going to tolerate people who are political leaders and fighters for the people being persecuted and brought under this kind of state repression. We've got a president running amok, unleashing white supremacy and calling for people to be locked up. We've got an attorney general who wants to dominate the streets and is sending unidentified agents after protesters. This cannot be tolerated. And the third thing is to the press, to the media. What have you been doing for the last 50 years on this case? What are you doing now? This needs to be investigated. There needs to be questions posed to these authorities, to the Michigan State Police, to the Wayne County, to the state of Michigan, to the federal officials. It's intolerable that people are not finding answers to why they're continuing to harass Darnell. So with that, I'd like to bring up Attorney Jeffrey Edison to say a few words, and then I'm going to read some statements from people who are supporting Darnell.
Right.
Hands off, Darnell. Hands off, Darnell.
Good morning. On behalf of my brother, freedom fighter and soldier for justice, Darnell Summers, we stand in solidarity in the defense of him against the ongoing repression that's been exhibited through state apparatus. There's been a lot of talk these days about police misconduct, law enforcement misconduct, and police abuse is not only the physical abuse, but the abuse of their exercise of authority over citizens. Police terrorism manifests in many different ways. The charges that were falsely brought against Darnell Summers initially in 1968, when he was an outstanding Vietnam soldier in Vietnam, trying to protect the principles that the country supposedly represents. He was in Vietnam. He became an anti-war activist and organized against the war. And at the same time, during the late 60s, was actively involved in the social resistance here in the United States that was resisted the oppression that existed then, the COINTELPRO program of the government, whose specific objective was to neutralize the Black Liberation Movement, focused on groups such as the Black Panther Party, the Nation of Islam, the Republic of New Africa. And it was in that context, specifically with what was happening out in Inkster, Michigan at the time, with the Malcolm X Cultural Center. There was a state apparatus that was an arm of COINTELPRO. In Michigan, they called it the Red Squad, that conducted surveillance, massive surveillance of activists and other folks who were organized against the status quo of the government at that time. And out of that surveillance of activists, a trooper was killed, and Darnell Summers was falsely accused of being involved in that. In 1968, he was extradited back from Vietnam, where he was serving in the military. The charges at that time that was based on incredible lying individual, the charges ultimately were dismissed in 68 because the government understood that they did not have a case against Darnell. Then some 13, 14 years later, after Darnell had left the country and took up residence in Germany, and continued his